welcome to another afternoon on the Settee. We hope that you're all doing well and as well as can be in these times. And this afternoon, myself, I'm Daniel from Civic Square, and Imi, we're hosted on the Settee today with Deborah Broomfield. And so we just want to welcome you to the Settee again. We've been going through this neighbourhood series. I think it's like the fourth one, is it, Imi? Like,
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
we've had so amazing.
Yeah.
I've lost track.
I know, yeah. We've just had so many amazing conversations, and again, we've got another treat for you all. But yeah, the Settee has been that space in the front room where you can kind of take a load off your mind, have a good chat with friends, have good conversation. And obviously the Settee is just one strand of one of the many series of events that we have in the front room, which is a long-term ambitious platform that we're building in the neighbourhood in the B16 area of Birmingham. And me and Nimi have just come back from Portland, from the neighbourhood, and just spent a really lovely morning with people there. So we've just raced back home to do this session. Yeah, how was it for you, Imi, this morning?
Yeah, it was really beautiful, and like we had some such important conversations and so many like deep stories that made me really understand the nuance of place, the idea of displacement. I think I'm really looking forward to the conversation with Deborah today, because we've had such a great morning and the weather was nice, and yeah, so I'm looking forward. I think the conversation this afternoon is really poignant to some of the stuff that we had this morning as well.
Yeah, definitely. So without further ado, just we just want to welcome anyone who's come onto the Zoom call and is ready to ask any questions to Deborah, or if you're watching on YouTube, anywhere you are, just feel free to make any comments as we go along. We'll be sharing links and stuff that Deborah's given to us to share about what we're talking about. And yeah, ask any questions as we go along, and we'll bring them into the conversation. So before we invite Deborah on, she's requested that we start by playing a music video. So I'm just gonna let us watch about a couple of minutes of that, and then we'll invite Deborah on to have the conversation. Okay. So, Deborah, do you want to join us on the screen? Hiya. You're muted at the moment, so you might just unmute yourself.
I'm muted. I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to the Settee, Deborah.
You know, it's a real honor to be asked. Because Civic Square, the hub, you know what I feel about you all. So thank you for asking me.
Oh, thank you, Deborah. We're so honoured to have you here as well. I feel like it's the feeling's completely mutual.
Yeah.
I'll give you a virtual hug.
Oh.
Yeah, how are you doing anyway? How's things been?
Well, you know, I'm still doing my thing. I think with COVID-19 and the upheaval that we've got across the world, it has scared me a little, but it's excited me at the same time, because I'm wondering what's ahead. I'm thinking, we can't go on like this. What's ahead? And I'm placing my hope in the future generations, such as the ones at Civic Square. You hear me say Civic Square, Maya, Amara, Andre, people that I've met and people that I've been really excited by. I'm hoping, and I'm seeing movements with young people that has excited me. And I'm hoping that I'll be around long enough, you know, to see what the changes will be. And I'm hoping there will be some changes. The reason why I chose that video was that I'm starting to think, and actually I've got to give some thanks to a seminar, online meet that I went to, and it was run by Maya, and they were talking about the role of art and culture in placemaking and activism. And when I looked at this video, I thought, well, is this what planning is about? You know, I think there are those of us who are hoping for a utopia, looking for developing an ideal way of living in an ideal place for everybody. And you note I say everybody, but we're in an unideal situation. And I did feel emotional when I saw that video, because for me, it was about peace, transformation, beauty, the combination of earth, the combination of nature with buildings. And I also thought, well, I don't know who put the video together, but I connected it with Africa. I connected it with talent, you know, especially around the buildings and the planning. And I connected it with the fact that there are Black people about, and I have to speak as a Black woman born in the UK. There are Black people about who know something about space and something about planning. I'd like to tell you, and I think this is a real relevant story around placemaking. I remember years ago, quite a while ago, I used to work for an enterprise agency, and this man came in, and to be honest, I think he had a mental health challenge, but to me, there's a fine line between sanity and so-called madness, and sometimes it's out of madness that genius comes. And he had a fantastic idea, because I used to sift through the business ideas, interview people, like a triage process, run the sort of market research seminars. And this chap had a wonderful idea for a theme park, and it was based on Tutankhamun. And to be honest with you, he was ridiculed a bit. I didn't ridicule him because I saw something in that vision, and it's all about people and vision, because I know we're going to have a talk about planning and marginalised communities. And when he came in, he was very serious about the idea, but he wasn't taken seriously. And I thought, well, I don't know what has happened to this man now, but he was meticulous in his thinking. And I thought, well, if he was Mr. Virgin, Richard Branson, he wouldn't have had to come to us and ask us for about help to do a business plan. He would have just got onto it. And sometimes I do reflect and think about what might have happened to this man, and the talent and the vision of communities that are very often ignored, very often dismissed. So that's a reason why I chose the video. It was an emotional thing. It was in connection with Black Lives Matter, and what was happening around George Floyd. And I have to say, Breonna Taylor and all the other ones, all the other lives that have been lost. And I felt reflective and emotional. So that's why I chose that video.
Yeah, I feel that, and that song, it's very, it has a lot of meaning, and then to see that visualization, I've never seen it before. You shared that with me, and there's so much in it. Like when you look at the artwork, and like it's got like lots of references to like ancient Egypt and pre-colonized Africa and all this, and what you were saying about like how dreams and visions that we as Black people have, it's all there in the music often. Like I remember there was a talk in the Department of Dreams that Alia held, and it was about we saw futures in the music, and just showing music videos and the visions that are incorporated in the art and the culture, and this is where we put that stuff. And so I feel like that's something that is kind of picking up in what you're saying. So yeah, thanks for opening up with that. It's really great way to start. And we wanted to just start off by well, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey, I guess, in this city in Birmingham. And
right. I'd say my journey has been interesting. It's been a roller coaster. I am one of the first of the Windrush arrivals, born in the UK. So in a way, I have a dual personality, a dual identity. So, and I think that's something that a lot of Windrush's children born here often have. It's a dual identity. Who are we? So I was born in Birmingham, and in fact, I'm living in a house where I used to go to school across the road. I used to go to junior school across the road. I've done a variety of things, and my last roles were in the public sector. And I used to work, I did business transformation type roles, sort of senior development officer roles. But I remember one of my roles was working within human resources, and we were in a difficult period of, you know, the efficiencies, in other words, sacking people. And I felt that in fact, it played on my health. I mean, I had other things happening, but it played on my health because I was in a situation where I was on a team and we were responsible for telling people that they may not have a job next month or in 3 months' time and that sort of thing. So it was quite stressful. And funnily enough, when we talk about placemaking and spaces, I worked in a building on a brownfield site just outside the city centre. And every time I used to go into this building, I was ill. I felt sick. So I'd go into the lift and I'd thought, oh my goodness, I'd start to be sweaty and everything. I thought, well, although menopause is a natural part of life, I thought, well, I'm not quite menopausal yet. So what's going on? And one of my, because I used to work for a team of valuers and surveyors, and he'd actually said it was a sick building. So there's connotations to that. There's connotations to the where buildings are placed there's connotations to what sick actually means. And then I took voluntary redundancy, and actually I was ill for a bit, but I started to feel a lot better. I didn't have those symptoms that I had when I was going up in the lift, going to work. Then I had this kind of false, that it's all again about people, this kind of, oh, I'll get a job straight away, which I didn't. And then I ended up going, doing various things, including the Beyond Unemployment. And it was a particular type of fury and anger that drove me there. Because I remember, I wasn't actually going to come in the room, because I peeped through the glass and I saw Imi, and she was running a session. I was upstairs in the hub and I was late, and I was thinking, shall I come in? Then I came in, and I'm glad I did actually. I made that decision to come into the room. Then after the Beyond Unemployment, I wanted to do I wanted to do a PhD. I've wanted to do one for about 4 years, to be honest. And I applied, and this is a story about not giving up really. I applied to do a PhD, and it's the same university where I did my master's degree. And I know the person who would have supervised me kept batting, because I did the proposal, she kept batting it back. And she said, well, have you thought about doing a master's? Because I'm interested in women's studies, feminism, women's studies. So that's what the initial plan was. And then she kept batting it back. I applied to do a master's in women's studies, and they sent me a snotty letter to say, because I didn't have the right entry qualifications. I didn't have maths to that level. And then the suggestion was that I went and did an access course. Nothing wrong with access courses. But the suggestion was I went and did an access course. And then afterwards, I ended up training as a community researcher through a regeneration initiative. I think it was European funded, but
so, I pause you there because let's because this is such a great part of the story, and I just want to go through a couple of things on this one, so and then we can move on to the next bit. So just before we talk about the community research and the masters, etc., tell us about. So obviously you mentioned Beyond Unemployment. For those of you watching at home, Beyond Unemployment was a program we sort of accidentally got involved in at Impact Hub Birmingham, which turned out to be really interesting in the sense of it was trying to be a cross-European collaboration across loads of hubs. But what I'm really glad happened was some incredible people like Deborah and others did come into that room on that first session, and we made some connections that have gone on to be quite pivotal. We could talk a bit about that later. But talk about your decision to go back into study. Like, why did you want to go back into study? What was the reason for that? And what was your kind of experience even on Beyond Unemployment and meeting people at the hub? Tell us about this period of time before we ask you a bit more about that actual the research and the masters and the PhD and all the wonderful things you're doing.
I wanted to go back into study, I think, because I had a fury and I had an anger about the fact that there are a lot of talented people, you know, because when you think about what's happening in terms of austerity and efficiencies and cuts to services, cuts to jobs, there were so many people who were virtually on the scrap heap. And I was determined that even though I've had the experience of being unemployed, so I know what it's like to go down to the job centre, I was determined to change my life trajectory, to try and change my story, because I still have a lot yet to offer. So it was about that, and it was about meeting as well. I remember meeting someone I knew for quite a long time, and I saw her, and she'd run quite a successful, very successful IT business, but that had gone for some reason. I don't know the full details. And she looked at me, and she was in pain. She's like an older woman, and she was in pain, and she was saying, nobody wants me, you know, what should I do next? So for me, it was about looking at those issues, reflecting on those issues. It was about myself, and it was about me saying, well, I'd like to be in a position where there may be other people, and also young people and young Black people who would be looking at me and saying, my goodness, if Deborah can do it, I can do it. So it was not in an arrogant way, but it was a bit about what can I do to help change the process? You know, because whatever we can do in a small way, one small step, it can change a lot. And that's really what it, my reasoning and what it was about.
Amazing, thank you. I'm gonna hand over to Daniel. I think we want to go a little bit into more about the work you did in the community researcher role, what you learned, and some of the things that properly connected us as you started to do that in Ladywood.
Yeah. I mean, just to comment on also what you were just saying about just remembering the time when you came to Impact Hub as well, and you were asking a lot of questions about things like people. I remember you was looking at people being laid off that are older, and like how their skills could be like reused, and there was lots of inquiries that you went off, and I just had this sense that you had a certain drive, that it didn't matter where it took you. You were about something. You were about, like, you're very curious and determined and focused on what it is that you were trying to, and it led you in certain directions. So I just find that really interesting, and I like what you said about like just going for it, because it shows, even if nothing else, it also shows other people that they can too. So that's just really powerful. Like,
absolutely. And also like what you said about, you know, I mean, it didn't even occur in my mind to think that you'd be on the scrap heap, but you're absolutely right. Like, you've got a whole career of value and incredible things to offer, both personally and professionally, but you're absolutely right about how society will just write off an age group. We're certainly grateful that you haven't written yourself off, but there's something so powerful about that as well. Anyway, I'll hand back to Daniel.
And it also links to what we were talking about last week with Sam about people being kind of chucked away, and like when people who are chucked away come together and like they find new value and it comes together. I think this is another illustration of what was going on at that time. So but we talked about like your decision to go back into studying, and there was this particular experience that you shared with me about what happened when you went on field visits, as I think this was on your master's course though, right? When you started to do the planning and integration. So just to start to go into like some of your experiences of studying and what it's been like for you, and share that story.
I think, I'll be honest, overall, it was, for for me to take that year, because the academic year, it's about 9 months, I went back to university full time, and it was a privilege for me to go. And I think I'm from the kind of generation where education is a privilege, although I've been to university before. And it was a privilege for me to be in an atmosphere of learning, because I am curious, and where I can think. And I know that throughout a lot of the seminars and tutorials and things that we did throughout the year, I actually, most of the time, I was the only one that asked any questions. But I was determined to ask questions that perhaps the tutors, the speakers hadn't thought about, you know, in relation to the subject area. So it enabled me to stretch my yearning to learn and think, and to apply the subject. I know planners have got their own definitions of what planning is and why they've gone into planning. But I know that what encouraged me slightly was that I know one of the tutors, he ended up being my personal tutor, really, really nice chap. And he showed a film about Jane Jacobs, because I was actually trying to think about, and it's quite a funny story, what my place was on the course, you know, what my place was on planning, because I didn't intentionally plan to study planning. I know I did the community research training, which was part of the Use It initiative. It's now over. They're looking at transforming. There's some of the community researchers who are looking at transforming into a different, you know, they're looking at other possibilities. But in terms of the program itself, it's over. And I was fortunate to be offered, I'd call it a scholarship through Use It, to do the masters. And I remember going to the, you know, the registration, you know, the first induction, because I thought it was a regeneration degree, masters. And I looked and I looked at the program and I thought, urban and regional planning, what's that? I thought, and my stomach dropped, because I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to cope with this. But I stuck it out. I thought, well, it will look bad. You know, it will look bad if I don't do it. And so I decided to go to the lectures. And I really got something out. I really got something out of it. But it was Jane Jacobs, actually. Even though Jane Jacobs, there is some criticism, I think, about, but bearing in mind when Jane Jacobs was operating, when she was around, we're talking about maybe 50s, 1960s. So she was a person of that time. So, but it was, there's some criticism about a lack of insight into intersectionality. You know, did she consider Black people, people of colour living in the area, that kind of thing, and other marginalised groups. But because of what Jane Jacobs represented, I thought, well, there's some room there. And that was how I got involved in the process. I engaged in the process, and I started to see things I think because when you've got a certain level of experience, you can see over the hill a bit further.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to relate some of the theories to real life and to ask questions. So I came
Could you maybe give it, like, can you tell us a little bit more about what for you, and I know a lot about Jane Jacobs and inspired by her, and also recognise the criticisms as well. But can you tell me a little bit more about what Jane Jacobs represented for you and how you started to see like these real life parallels, etc.? Because I think that would be really good. Assume lots of people don't know anything about Jane as well in the audience.
Because Jane Jacobs, she wasn't an accredited planner, was she? She was a journalist. So she was an observer, I think, of real life. Mm-hmm. And she saw a disorganized, the importance of the space and the importance of an organ being disorganized in an organized way. And she saw the value of what different people made to that space. And I think really for me, that was what it was that I thought about Jane Jacobs, and maybe I might have, or I do have, I'll have something to offer and something to think about, because I came at planning from a social justice, even though I understand a bit about the importance of development as well, but the social justice angle, the fact that people make places, because you can have spaces, but if you haven't got the people, and the people with the resilience to contribute to that space, to making that space what it is, then what is planning about? Although you might have some planners who come at it from a dispassionate scientific approach. But for me, because I'd always thought about, I'd always thought about people. Even before I decided to study this subject. And I wanted to see what it was about, the subject of planning and how people played a part in it.
And the different ways that people can play a part in it, like there's lots of different ways.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's maybe this is really brilliant to hear, Deborah, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the examples that you talk about that you started to see in everyday life. But I love that parallel and that idea that just seeing that you don't have to just be interested in planning places, regeneration, development if you've got the professional skills in it. Actually, as citizens, and residents of places, we've been sort of designed out as if those decisions are just for the big decision makers, as opposed to this idea that we all contribute to that. And I remember watching Citizen Jane, the film that's about her life, and I was just saying to the team, perhaps we can do a screening of that, because of course, whilst I absolutely recognise the criticisms and limits of all sorts of different schools of thought, some of the work that Jane Jacobs did about taking on the decision makers and the catastrophic decisions they'd made about putting highways through neighbourhoods and looking at outcomes. And you're right, doing that from a perspective of a woman, which was quite radical back then, and then also doing it without an actual formal qualification in the space, and so I'm really interested about how that kind of inspired you as well. And I'm interested, let's try and move, because we also want to do like questions as well. But let's think a little bit about your research themes. So you talk a lot about so you did your dissertation in women and disadvantaged groups and their perceptions of experiences at the receiving end of planning process during austerity. Can you tell us a little bit about like what you learned through this? What were some of the examples you came across and some of your key learnings?
In terms of the overall thematic approach, I am interested in how austerity has impacted the planning process, how it's impacted the planning process, and how women and marginalised communities have been disproportionately affected. Now, I'm also interested in aspects of what feminist planning might be seen as. And I mean more than just making sure that areas are lit up. It's a lot more than that. But I wanted to look at what feminist approaches were used in communities to actually support each other and to support each other during times of austerity. So that's what the discussion in terms of my master's dissertation was basically about. Now, what I found was that there would, which to give, you know, there are some regulatory bodies, you know, accreditation bodies, RTPI and the Town and Country Planning Association. To give them their due, I think they are looking at some of these issues. But what came out of the work that I did was that there was a general distrust of what planning was about and what it stood for. And maybe I would, when I thought about that, maybe it was about understanding both on the type of, the side of the planners, and it's mostly about spatial planning, both on the side of the planners and on the side of communities, what planning is about. Because I also asked in my dissertation what respondents thought, you know, what do you think planning is about? And also, you know, the answers varied. They varied quite considerably, but there was an element of distrust. And the element of distrust mainly stemmed around the communications. The fact that I'm assuming, because it's I spoke to a certain number of people, so I have to speak as if from what they were feeling, that the planners just came and did to them without actually recognising the value and the skill that was already existent in that community. So they had a plan, a vision already for particular things, and came in and set up a consultation process and said, what do you think? And although that's a feasible way of consultation, I know that it's also been looked at as to the stage that you bring communities in the consultation process, and should they be coming in at the building, at the vision stage of that, whatever that development is. And also there was issues around the plans, master plans, not reflecting the communities that were in that area. So whoever was doing the planning already had a vision for what that area might look like or could look like. And then they came in afterwards and did the consultation. There was an interesting comparison, a couple of comparisons about what the impact was on austerity, on planning and lifestyle. Because I remember having, it was quite and this is where I think history in planning and narratives, the importance of actually listening, hearing people, hearing what they had to say, is also important in the process. So there was this, someone who gave a story, but that's her story about how a particular area had changed due to mixed developments, where, you know, you have the stores and the apartments on top, mixed developments, and how it changed the fabric of the community, and how it changed from when her mother was in that area and what her mother's journey was in terms of she was able to go to Marks and Spencer's, she was able to do her shopping, have her lunch with her friends, but because of it's about fabric of an area as well, how the fabric of the area changed. It had, this person felt it had an impact on her living standards, you know, because some of those areas, some of those shops and apartments ended up empty, you know, and she felt that she actually worked for an estate agent, and it affected her lifestyle, her how she lived, but she could see the comparison. And there were planners, because I spoke to a couple of planners who actually accepted, and you know, so I think that because of austerity, they weren't able to actually do what they felt they should be doing. And there was also there was an acceptance that austerity and cuts had shifted the emphasis on what planning may be about, or it should be about, or what those planners saw it was about. And there was the distrust, a big distrust element that came out of my research, out of my work.
And I was just going to pause you there on the research, because I read a little bit. I read your dissertation, and there were some really great moments, and there's some link to what you've just talked about there. Well, the whole thing was incredible, but there was some particular bits that I wanted to pick up from what you've just talked about there about the real example. And you talked about it, like I was reading the observation section, where you start off one of the observations with a quote that says, "If you do grand theory, you spend so much time constructing elegant accounts of the world that you never touch base with the ground on which the world rests." And you shared this quote from Silverman in there, and you said the reason behind using this quote is that it illustrated approaches of both looking into the theory and trying to understand what was happening in the real world. And then you go on to talk about an example of Osler Park, and there's a really important section about the relevance of that observation on the dissertation inquiry that was really important around insurgency and feminist planning approaches. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about your real life observations that you shared in the dissertation and what you learned from that, because I think that quote is so profound. And if you missed it, I'll say it one more time. If you do grand theory, you spend so much time constructing elegant accounts of the world that you never touch base with the ground on which the world rests. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that, because I think there's so much great insight about feminist planning, community care and insurgency that you share that I'd love for you to tell us more about.
Yeah, when I reflect on the process, it was about a discipline being that theoretical and scientific, that the ability to actually understand and to position the discipline in reality was missing. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what that quote was about. The need for sometimes when you're doing although there are different schools of thought as to the level that you participate and the level of participation, there are differences, but it was about participation theory, immersing oneself into that environment to actually get an understanding of what is going on for the people that live there, the people that are actually facing the challenge of having their park potentially closed for a development. So there is a question, I suppose, about how much immersion, when we think about research, do we actually do? And then you have to think about the immersion without bias, because I felt, well, I was interested in the topic anyway, and I think it showed through my dissertation. I was interested in the topic, but I had to apply a certain amount as well of a dispassionate approach, but at the same time, I think I'm still relatively new to the process, but being a feminist planner, and looking at feminist approaches, it's about making sure that what it is you look at reflects everybody in that process. And not only does it reflect the groups, everybody in that process, you don't discount what the atmosphere is, you don't discount what that person or that group is feeling at the time. And when I think about that quote, that was why I chose that quote, because that park was being, there was a potential of closure, and there was a passion there. We are not going to see this park closed. And also there was a feeling that there would be a community damaged potentially, with young people, families not being able to use that space.
Yeah, I was following that story with the Osler Street Park, and then just reflecting on that and the conversation that we had the other day about when I was looking through your research, and you talked about how it's widely accepted that women are really they keep the stability of communities, and they're so important, but not involved in the planning process enough. And you talked about how, well, you asked this question, how long do we keep regenerating and regenerating without inputting the resilience? And the resilience comes through like a lot of those spaces that often come into contention, like Osler Street play area, like because the communities are able to play and explore and have that space and that kind of agency over space in the city. The resilience is created in those spaces. But I just wondered if you wanted to share a little bit more on that point about like how important it is to input the resilience and not just regenerate every minute. Like
yeah, and I'm going to build on that to also go further to say like, and so hopefully you can build on this question, like inputting the resilience, and also like what happens when communities are just constantly fighting to save stuff instead of actually building their dreams, you know, and they're always trying to save stuff from the developers and save stuff from being bulldozed. And what would happen if we were actually putting that much collective, beautiful, incredible energy into like, you know, what actually needs to be done, or the future. And so I'm interested in that. What are your thoughts? Because you were at a lot of the Department of Dreams. You talk about inputting this resilience. Tell us a bit more about, you know, your thoughts in this whole space, because I'm really fascinated by it.
The reason why I spoke about regeneration is that I can remember, especially when I used to work for the public sector, and this we're talking about going back a few years. You know, I've always heard the terms, you know, there's regeneration, SRB6 and urban development. And I think really I've got to the stage now where I'm thinking, well, how much regeneration do you actually do? When is the point going to come when, in terms of building up a community, that community, we put the resilient structures in so that that community or that area is able to support themselves to a degree? Because I mean, I'm not political or anything, but I do believe that there should be some state intervention. You know, I don't like the idea about services being pulled constantly and people just being left. I'm not into that. I don't really believe in that. But I do believe that there should be some support in terms of getting, you know, helping to support people who want to work, for instance. You know, how can we help people to, I think communities will have to change in possibly the structure, and I think there may be a different way of, that's why I've looked at, I'm looking at the Just City, what the Just City stands for, and right to the city. But for me, I think possibly old school people, there are people that need to earn a living, you know, to support their families. How do we get people in communities job ready? Also opening up opportunities for careers that possibly young people haven't thought about, like planning, for instance, and surveying, you know, that kind of thing. I know that there are moves to make, you know, there is the intent, and and I think there are good intents in terms of diversity, in terms of, as I said in my blog, who is planning my city? you know, so there is that kind of thing. I do have some concerns about, because I'm not even sure if we're in the 5th industrial revolution. I think we're in the 4th at the moment. But how do we get people, not get people ready, but facilitate a process where communities, and not all communities are ready, not all communities will be at that stage, and not everybody will want to, but those that can, how do we prepare people for this 4th/5th industrial revolution? Because I'm not sure that I'm not sure that, I don't feel prepared for it anyway. You know, I don't feel prepared, because I remember doing a talk a while back, and it was about, I did it for the RIBA, is that right? And I thought, well, I'm interested in this. What's the relevance? But it's for all communities, not just age. But what's the relevance of the over 50s to the 4th industrial revolution? What is the relevance of communities? How do we get ready?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also really interesting, because I know that you've been at quite a few talks at the Hub as we were closing, and I remember you were around for one of Kate Rayworth's, and this idea of like, well, what does regeneration and growth look like, right? Because it can't just be endless growth. We can't just have endless growth. We can't just keep shooting the planetary boundaries. Daniel and I were talking to someone this morning who had left their homeland of Fiji because it was sinking, and had obviously the means to move away and move to the UK and had moved to the area. But like, how do we understand what the 4th or the 5th or the next industrial revolutions look like, when we know that we're overshooting on all of our like planetary boundaries, and we don't understand that. So and so I'm really interested in that, when you talk about how do we prepare, how do we work together, how do we transition communities to move into that direction. Do you have any like thoughts on that? Did you come across any of that? And I know that there's a particular relevance to Black and non-Black people of colour communities who have already been displaced or have had to move or have come away to other places to understand what that means. How do you think we move through this time where so much of this is changing? And what did your research, or has any of your time doing this work, have you heard views, and what are your thoughts about this?
Again, not being particularly political, because I think politics confuse, especially, you know, the environment that we're in. Politics confuses me. But I really think, and our communities, I really think that there may be a movement towards a new type of politics. And what that, defining what that is, I'm not sure. But however, when I think about, because I'd like to look at issues, sort of thoughts around the just city, and thoughts of around rights to the city. Now, I was doing some quite interesting reading about rights to the city, where I can't pronounce his name, but I could give you the link afterwards, where I think it's Le Vubier, something like that, where this thinker was looking at the process, when do we get to a point where communities actually take charge of their own development, their own actions, their own communities? I really think that, and I think it is happening in a way, that work will be looking into this, a new type of economics. Because I think economics, politics, environment, it's all about planning. Public health is all connected with in the planning process. And yeah, it was about looking at a process in where communities start to claim their right to the city, in terms of how they access space, housing, health, and how they make decisions within those spaces. And there's also, which I need to do more work on this, Feinstein and Sandycock, who looks at the just city processes, you know, democracy and equality. What do we need to do to get to those stages? I actually think, and this might be quite controversial, that there may be a philanthropist somewhere who's got a lot of money, someone who's got a lot of money. I'm wondering, because there's actually isn't there 83 millionaires or billionaires who wrote an open letter to say that we can't go on like this, you know, tax us more. I do think that the current status of just thinking about yourself, challenged, as opposed to what it is that communities do. But planning does have a place in that. The interesting thing about planning is that there are people that, I think a lot of us are planners in a way. It just depends on what the definition is and what we class as planning. But I do think, you know, the process will, I think the system, the current system that we've got, it'll change. I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime, but what was interesting was around the just city and the rights to the city approach. Also, land is important, isn't it? Land and power and development, the ownership of land. It's not, because if you own a house, sometimes you don't necessarily own the land. And I do think that there will be eventual, I know that there is the regulatory system. Eventually that will be challenged. But I think there's who will do it. I'm not sure.
But I think you sort of at the beginning also started to answer that, because there is like such great movements, isn't there, that are starting to emerge. We saw lots of them in the Department of Dreams. You did a shout out for Amara, and those of you who don't know, they're running an incredible crowdfunder and vision for Black Land and Spatial Justice project, and you know, there's land in our names, and there's so many other projects that are looking at regulation and all sorts. So I definitely share your your sort of thrill and fear of the recent times, because my thrill is also part of watching how many people are like really starting to organize and really starting to question and challenge the systems that have produced so much consistent harm in so many ways, but also that are just saying that we just can't carry on like this. And Iris, I just realized that you had asked the question that I started to talk about around the huge carbon footprint of constant regeneration. And so I wanted to start to, I'm sorry I didn't ask that question, it came into my earlier question. I wanted to start to wrap up because we're already close to time. We could talk to you forever, but I know Daniel will also, I think talking about land makes me think about Andy in my mind. If you don't know about Andy's demo dev work, please follow that and see what he's up to as well. He's Andy Revo on Twitter. But I was going to say, I'll probably ask a wrap-up question and then hand over to Daniel for any final thoughts. But like, so all of this incredible work you're doing, and all this research and the PhD and all the on the ground mobilizing and work that you've seen and been part of, and the area that you're based in, which is, we all know, is a hotspot for regeneration right now. What are your hopes for the future, and what are you hoping that the work that you're doing can lead to, and the sorts of things that you want to really help to change and shift?
Well, my hopes for the future is that the planning discipline, and I think I don't know if it's part of a sort of a British mindset, you know, we are better than you kind of thing. But I'm hoping that they learn from other examples. And what I found really useful, one of the useful things to the lockdown is that I've been able to open up to different, what's happening across the world globally, you know, in terms of planning and planners and urbanism and what urbanism is and that kind of thing. And what I'm also interested in is, which I'm aware that I did raise a question about this and COVID and the impact on, you know, the disproportionate impact on communities, what the link was between public health and the planning process. I'd like to see, because there's some really good examples of where, and I've seen, you know, I was watching something on South Africa where there were people actually, representatives going out into the communities, you know, to talk about COVID-19 and what was happening around that. And that is a planning approach, but for me, it's what will be the linkages. I'd like to see a greater link between, you know, the planning as a discipline, public health, understanding communities, a lot more around diversity, and also super diversity, which I know that there's work going on around that, but then again, there seems to be work going around on a lot of things, but it's whether what's being done about it, understanding the diversity, the complexities of communities. Although I appreciate that there is a resource issue across the discipline, and that's really my hope, is actually learning from experience, widening the discipline to, you know, making it more, there's more opportunities open to different types of people. I'd like to see, whatever that is, a new type of planner. To be honest, if I had my way, I'd place planners, as well as doing their degrees, I'd actually literally place them in communities. And literally place them in communities for a week. Never, you know, okay, we can visit places, and not just speak to community researchers, which sometimes, even myself, you can be the usual suspects, but speak to actual people about what it's like to live in that area. So possibly these things are being thought of, I don't know, but that's what I'd like to see.
Cool. Thanks, Deborah. And I think, like a lot of what you've shared today, there's so many running themes, and we wanted to share this final song that you selected, the Joni Mitchell song, to kind of wrap up and sign out. But before we play this song, do you want to do a little intro, and we just say thanks to you for joining and everyone for joining. What Joni Mitchell's Yellow Taxi? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well,
we'll play it.
Well, Joni Mitchell, along with Bob Marley, and I'm sure there's a lot more. There's a lot of young writers and visionaries and artists about. But she wrote this song. She in her 20s. I think she's still around, and she's quite an iconic artist. And she wrote this song as an observation. She was sitting in a hotel room and looking out on the developments and the changes which were happening around her. And she wrote a song as a result of that. It can be classed as a protest song, I'm not sure. However, there were things in there that, you know, in terms of the lyrics, I think the animation's really good. But in terms of the lyrics, I thought, God, this is still happening now. And I like the bit at the end where she gives a laugh at the end, as if to say, you fools, you're changing what you don't need to change. And I think that's why I chose it.
Great. Well, thanks, Deborah. It's been a pleasure having you on the Settee today.
Likewise.
Yeah. And we'll be in touch. We're going to play out with Joni Mitchell's Yellow Taxi.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Deborah. It's been such an honour and a pleasure. There's so much we could talk to you about, and like you said in your quote, the most important thing is we get on the ground and actually see how we can do this work together. And we're really excited to work alongside you. Thanks to everyone who's also tuned in, and to say that there's lots more things like this that you can get involved in. There'll be more coming from the Department of Dreams if you're interested in lots of the things that Deborah has said about utopias, future visions, and you know what planning and regeneration, and hopefully not just constant regeneration, can look like in the future. In the front room, there's community lunches, there's a Facebook group, there's a front room key you can join on Wednesdays and Saturdays if you are able to. You can join us from a physical distance in the South Loop Park in Ladywood. We can talk, we can connect, we can share, we can leave you in peace to have a cup of tea or coffee. But we're really looking forward to what it means to work together as well, Deborah. And yeah, we're very glad the day you looked into that window in the hub and decided come back in, because we've not quite been the same since, and it's been incredible. And yeah, like loads of good luck and good vibes for your PhD, because we can't wait for Dr. Deborah Broomfield.
Dr. Deborah Broomfield.
We're
Soon
so
come.
ready for this.
Yeah.
Go on, Deborah. Go on. But yeah, follow Deborah on all her social media. Check out the links. And no doubt when things are safe, you'll see Deborah and us at the front room, Civic Square, Maya, Eat, Make, Play, lots of the incredible organisations and people that have been on the Settee, hopefully making magic happen here in Birmingham. And yeah, thanks for your tenacity, your wisdom, and for sharing with us, Deborah. And it's been great to be on the Settee with you, Daniel, as well.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Virtual hug.
Amazing.
See you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. For those of you still with us, just to let you know that we've got lots more on the Settees coming up. We've got the next on the Settee with Nets Derbyshire, who is an incredible community organiser and resident in Ladywood in B16. Nets will be on the Settee talking about her work with the Caris Neighbourhood Project and so many more incredible things that she's learned and done across the area in her really, really important work. And the session's going to be on the 1st of August at 2 o'clock. We've got, this Saturday. We've got plenty more coming up with Emma Mendes, with Marlene McKenzie, with lots more that are going on to the website every day. And if you're watching from the neighbourhood and you'd like to be on the Settee with us, just drop us a message, because we'd love to talk to you. Hopefully we'll see you on Saturday, either in person or virtually, or both, with Nets and with lots of lovely people from across the wider area. So I just want to say thanks, and we're checking out now, and you can catch us on the Front Room and Civic Square Twitter for more details. Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.